I mean, it's just unbelievable what happened, how much fraud, how much negligence, how much malfeasance went into all this. And
Hillary Clinton called Tulsi Gabbard, when she was a Democratic candidate, a Russian plant or a Russian
100%.
agent herself.
There it is.
So Hillary threw the first punch.
Hillary threw the first punch. One of the biggest pillars of the bullshit world that liberals have been living in for the last 10 years is Russiagate. And I just want to say, the thing that pisses me off the most about this isn't that it's like a total campaign op to fucking, make Trump seem like a Russian asset and also grease the wheels for a war, like a proxy war with Russia. More than anything, what this was an excuse the Democratic Party used to not have to change anything when they lost inevitably to Donald Trump. And it was such a convenient scapegoat for so many different things that these people wanted, that it couldn't help but be, lapped up and regurgitated by every single one of their minions in the press. Rachel obviously being one of the worst of all of them, who dressed it up, as a former fan of Rachel Maddow, one of the things she does very well is create compelling, intelligent sounding narratives that, kind of lead you down the political path that she wants to take you. And that's not always a bad thing, except for when they're completely fabricated and nonsense and designed to apologize for the Democratic Party being a shit show full of right wingers that is basically just the Republicans in a nice outfit, a pig with lipstick on it, and then B, make the country, Russophobic again and against Putin, so that when we start dumping billions and billions of dollars unaccounted for into Ukraine, no one loses their shit. Well, Putin, he hacked our election, so what are you going to do? We got to fucking, so that was one of the biggest parts of it. But this has all pretty much come undone now. And I want to start, the first clip I'm going to show you here is Aaron Matei, who, all the best journalists too were onto this from the beginning. Matt Taibbi, Aaron Matei, Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald. All these people were wise to it and open about it from the beginning. And to me, this is kind of a barometer for trust for me. I don't take anyone serious who sold this. Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske and and the Young Turks and all those assholes being a good example who failed this test. They sold this shit. Young Turks defamed Julian Assange over this shit. So let me play this clip. This is really good. This is Aaron Matei actually hosting Glenn Greenwald's show, and this guy just kind of breaks down what the crux of the whole scandal actually was. So you can kind of, just to give you like the general overview again.
Series of really important document releases declassified by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. For people who are not following the story closely, as closely as you and I have, what do you think is most important to know, and what revelations stand out to you?
What we now know is that both our intelligence and our law enforcement communities were hijacked by political operatives in the 2016 election to take the normal process of how you would evaluate election interference, which goes on, by the way, in every election with multiple countries, and try to turn it into a political weapon and to create the perception in the public that Donald Trump conspired with Vladimir Putin to defeat Hillary.
I love that he says Putin, because I used to say Putin. People give me a shit for it. Pew, 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 Putin. Also, though, the point that I've always latched onto, and one of the reasons I think I was early skeptic of this, is to what extent, because he's like, oh, foreign countries always fucking mess around in our elections. To what extent, though? To what extent did Russia mess around in our election? A very tiny, like a micro, a fraction of a drop in a bucket is what they like when you get into the actual details of what they did and you actually look at the ads. It was a completely manufactured nonsense. Once you scratch the surface of this claim and go, okay, well, what did they actually do? What did the Russians do to influence the election? And you see what they claim was done. It's not even, you can't help but laugh at the whole thing. And very few people did that because, the journalists who kind of sold it were banking on people being upset that Hillary lost and, covering for the Democrats and working to grease the wheels for a war with Russia so they could sell weapons. Their advertisers could sell, the fucking deal.
Now, that concept starts with Hillary Clinton herself. The intelligence community intercepts a conversation indicating that Hillary personally approved a plan in mid-July to hang a fake Russian shingle on Donald Trump's campaign house, basically play a dirty trick and make it look like Vladimir and Donald were together on the election. The president of the United States at the time, Barack Obama, is personally warned about this on or about July 25th by John Brennan. And 5 days later, the president does not stop the FBI when the FBI decides to open up on that allegation. And
I'm just trying to make this a little more entertaining for you by inserting some sound effects.
Between July and November, there's a concerted effort to get an FBI investigation going, to get a FISA warrant going, to then leak the information to try to get voters to believe this false story that was an illusion of the Clinton campaign. Donald Trump still wins the election, not with Vladimir Putin's help, but by the help of the American people. And then in December, with Hillary Clinton chastened by her loss, the intelligence community, working with John Brennan, tries to create a plausible explanation that Hillary only lost because Vladimir Putin had hijacked the election for Donald Trump. And
put a chick in it, make her gay.
Over the objections of career CIA officials. They do this in violation of the intelligence community's directive rules. And they do it by relying on a document that by December of 2016, the Steele dossier, we all know it now, had been fully discredited. And yet it is used to drive a conclusion that Vladimir Putin was trying specifically to help Donald Trump win. And it's really dramatic how it happens. On December 8th of 2016.
You have to ask yourself the question too, like no one ever asked these questions. Like, why would Vladimir Putin want Donald Trump to win? One. But also the question that has been coming up in my head repeatedly in recent days as all this new information comes out about this scandal and kind of confirming what a fake scam it all was. Now we have hard evidence. We all knew it was a scam, but now the evidence is there. Basically is what's going on. But you have to ask yourself, and I didn't even think about this really until recently, Hillary Clinton was the fucking Secretary of State under Obama. So all these droogies in the intelligence community worked for her at one point. She kind of was politically savvy enough to step out of the limelight for a minute and be like, hey, I'm not going to be Secretary of State for a year or two because I'm going to run for president. But all these people, the John Brennans of the world, stood to gain from a Hillary Clinton presidency, right? Like they would be like the Comeys and the Brennans would be the guys who got the jobs in the Hillary Clinton administration. So now you even have a clear motivation for why they did this shit. Anyway, let me let this guy finish.
The election, the intelligence committee was going to come into Barack Obama and say, hey, we assess that Russia, like it always did, gotten meddled in the election a little bit, but it did not have a favored candidate. In fact, it so much didn't have a favored candidate that it dropped out of its active measures, its dirty tricks, its intelligence in October, the very month if you were going to try to influence the election, you would most be active, right? If you wanted Hillary or Donald Trump to win, October's the month when people are making up their minds. That's when you would do your most active things.
Stupid ass.
Out of the election in October. On December 8th, they were going to tell Barack Obama that. That briefing got canceled. The next day, Barack Obama orders a new review led only by John Brennan, James Comey, and the NSA director. And within a few short weeks, they flip-flop the conclusions and say, oh, we've now decided magically that Vladimir Putin was specifically trying to help Donald Trump. And the only way they can get there, by today's explosive revelations that Tulsi Gabbard gave us, is they have to use the Steele dossier, which by that time has been discredited over and over again. Bruce Orr told them.
Yeah, and at this point, the Clinton campaign had to pay a fine for the Steele dossier because it was discovered that they funded it through, back channels, which is what these people always do so they can wash their hands. A contractor did it.
In August, it was not to be relied on. The CIA warned the FBI in September that Steele's network of sources had been infiltrated by Russia intelligence. He needed to be reevaluated. The FBI fires Christopher Steele after catching him leak the existence of the investigation and his dossier in November. And by December, the FBI has completed a spreadsheet of every sentence of the Steele dossier and concluded they can't corroborate it or they've debunked every sentence. And despite all that, they decided to use it over the rules of the intelligence community to plant this dirty secret or to plant this lie on the American people that Vladimir Putin helped Donald Trump win the election.
I'm personally skeptical that there even was any kind of serious Russian meddling operation at all.
There it is. Because again, I think Aaron says
there were some Facebook ads. We know about that and some dumb memes. But in terms of the email hacking, I'm even more skeptical now after seeing the newly declassified intelligence. But before I get into that with you, I want to go back to July because it's really important what you discussed initially. So in July, we learned very, very late, years later, that the Obama administration got a warning that Russia was aware of a plot to falsely tie Trump to Russia. And despite that, as you explained, the Obama administration still let the FBI go ahead with its collusion investigation. And what we also learned way later was that weeks before the FBI opened up its fake collusion investigation into Trump and Russia, Victoria Nuland, who was then a senior State Department official, authorized the FBI to go and collect this Steele dossier, which is the Clinton campaign-funded collection of conspiracy theories. But yet the FBI wants us to believe that that had nothing to do with their decision to open up Crossfire Hurricane, the Trump-Russia collusion investigation.
So Victoria Nuland, just to remind you, in case you don't remember, is the woman who was on the phone call, the leaked phone call, deciding who's going to be the president of Ukraine. She's the woman who was like handing out cookies. She's basically one of the women from the Bush era, the neocons who helped kind of basically, plot that whole exercise to be nice about it.
The Trump-Russia collusion probe. But on the issue,
so they had a motivation to get Hillary in so they could continue their project forward. And in fact, Trump beating her in that election cycle kind of like threw a little bit of a wrench into it. Not that he's not a good little empire doggy who isn't going to go along with it eventually anyway, once he figures out what he can get out of it. But, again, it's like the motivation is so much clearer now. And now we have all this kind of evidence to back it up.
Of this warning by Brennan, of the so-called Clinton plan intelligence.
Let me stop, Aaron, just for 1 second, because you just said something pretty profound. It's really important to realize that after they're warned that Hillary Clinton's going to plant a dirty trick, the FBI's FISA warrant relies on the direct evidence of that dirty trick, right? The Steele dossier was a big part of the dirty trick that the Clinton campaign was planting, along with the fake Alpha Bank story. The FBI takes the very fruit of what they know to be a dirty trick because they were warned, and they use it to predicate the investigation. That's what makes it more than just bumbling and stumbling. That's why a lot of people like Kash Patel, who's now opened a conspiracy case, believe it was criminal in nature.
Absolutely. Okay, speaking of criminal.
So, okay, first and foremost, you're a dumbass if you think Obama's going to go to jail for this. Obama ain't shit happening to Obama other than like people are talking shit about him in the press. First of all, he was the president, and Nixon said it, if the president does it, it's not a crime. But look at Trump. I mean, they tried to put Trump in the court ruled in Trump's favor in those cases. So what could happen though is much like Steve Bannon and Mike Flynn, the people around this, or Scooter Libby back in the, Dick Cheney, George Bush days, those mid-level guys are usually the fall guys that are going to take the heat for something like this, which is just now, an obvious scam that they fomented for so many reasons. So I want to show you this other clip because watching this stuff come out, it got me thinking, like, I remember like how bad this really got, the propaganda around like Trump's a secret Russian, he's a secret Russian spy. I remember arguing with some of my relatives. I'm like, you really think the president is a secret Russian spy? And they're like, no one said that. No one said they thought he was a secret. I'm like, yes, they did. They might not have said that directly, like he's a secret Russian spy, but that's the implication. That has been the implication from day one. Oh, he's working with Putin. Putin's pulling the strings, you know, like Putin's this super powerful dude that controls it all. And this is how bad, just to remind you, Max and Aaron, this is how bad this shit got. And it's all based on this Steele dossier.
Was a big part of this.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman was brought in, formerly the voice of God, commissioned by neocons, Bill Kristol, and
Surely you
Rob
can't be serious.
Reiner was a
I
big
am
figure
serious.
in
And
pushing
don't call me
Russiagate.
Shirley.
They had what the committee to investigate Russiagate or something, like it was one of these neocon committees, but it was fronted by Hollywood figures.
That's
and Morgan
insulting.
Freeman, who I think had suffered a heavy lawsuit for sexually harassing his like daughter-in-law or something bizarre like that. And then Hollywood
Wait,
cooked.
so does anyone know about that? I forgot to look that up, but that's it. Max said something about Morgan Freeman having like some sexual harassment thing against his daughter-in-law. I'm going to actually, okay, before we go on, I had no idea. Max, breaking news in my world. I'm not a big celebrity guy. Murder suspect controversially claims Morgan Freeman and his step-granddaughter had sexually inappropriate relationship. Lamar Davenport is charged with second-degree murder in 2015, slaying of Diana, the granddaughter of Freeman's first wife. An attorney for the man who allegedly murdered Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter reportedly claimed in court last week that Hines told her suspected killer, she and Freeman, had an inappropriate sexual relationship, an accusation both Freeman and Hines have previously vehemently dismissed. Okay, well, a crazy guy who killed Morgan Freeman's granddaughter said he was having a okay, yeah. So I don't know if that's verified or not, but that's interesting. Seems like pretty gossipy. Anyway, let's get back to
this Comey rule. Do you remember that?
Comey, yeah. Like
they basically made James Comey, who is one of the biggest frauds in all of this, into a hero and made a Hollywood style production about him based around the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier was a script for like a Hollywood style blockbuster film. And almost every scene in this film was a fabrication, a complete lie, but it was
based on the Steele dossier.
A drama for MSNBC liberals, so they could actually, it's sort of like how the West Wing gave them a parallel Democratic Party Aaron Sorkin presidency when George W. Bush was president, so they could live that fantasy without actually like doing anything meaningful against Bush or the Iraq War.
So my sister loves the West Wing and is always begging me to watch it. And based on like the commentary that Max has given on that show, and that I've heard a lot of people go, it's like a brunch liberal fucking snooze fest. I haven't ever watched it, but maybe you think it's good, maybe you can verify that it's terrible. Let me know in the comments if you have opinions on that. But my sister's been telling me like, yo, you got to watch West Wing. You have to watch. You'd love the West Wing. You would love it, because she knows how politically chatty I am. Anyway,
like just this is what they were given.
Whose entry into politics? They traded favors with him. They hated his.
So this is a briefing. I think this might be Pete Strzok supposedly giving a briefing to the FBI at the beginning of Crossfire Hurricane.
His universe pageant. They offered their help in future Trump real estate deals within Russia, including a Trump tower in Moscow, and granted him access to hundreds of millions in loans from banks controlled by the Russian oligarchy, just as U.S. banks have declared Trump to be.
That's Jeff Daniels, who is playing. He's playing McCabe, I think.
I think he's playing Comey, is he not?
Yeah, he might be Comey. Yeah. He doesn't look like Comey.
Yeah. Unworthy credit risk.
Like, my daughter is about to let P. Diddy get off scot-free. I'm so proud.
It was a years-long effort to recruit and maintain Trump as an asset of the FSB, with the long-term goal of getting him to sow discord and disunity within the U.S.
Why does that dude remind me of like Data from Star Trek The Next Generation too? Maybe it's just the way that it's shot.
Further research that since last year, the Trump campaign has, quote, accepted a regular flow of intelligence from the Kremlin on his political rivals. Again, we have not corroborated any of this independently, and it should be noted that the original
Again, we have not corroborated any of this independently.
financier of the dossier was a Republican, never Trumper. The funds to finish the dossier then came from the Democrats.
They had to kind of throw that in there to avoid a Trump lawsuit, maybe.
Go on. The dossier holds that the FSB's main leverage over Trump is likely blackmail, made possible because the Russians had videos of Trump engaging in, quote, perverted sexual acts when he stayed in the presidential suite of Moscow's Ritz-Carlton Hotel in 2013, specifically a, quote, golden showers show.
So those two actors are going to urinate on Donald Trump's yellow hair.
So the other thing too about this is based on the way that, because the whole story is that like Trump wanted to be peed on like the bed that the Obamas slept in Russia or whatever. That's totally believable based on the way that Trump acted, you know, towards Obama, like he's a secret Muslim and all this stuff, and like how like kind of classless he was during the Obama era, like going on Fox News and just shit talking the president all the time. You know, I don't think, as much as I kind of defend Trump, you know, just by proxy, because I feel like I hate it's because I hate the establishment so much, and I just see how much of the hate for him is just them pushing against him. You know, there's plenty of warranted, you know, legitimate things to hate about Trump. As I've said hundreds of times, I think one of the things that people hate the most about him is that he kind of accurately embodies what America really is and the things that we really stand for on the world stage in reality, not in the fake little, you know, fairy tale world in our heads that we live in, that we think, oh, America's the good guys. Like, no, Trump is the ugly fucking pig with lipstick on it that we really are to the rest of the world. And that it really bothers a lot of people to see that, you know what I mean? And I also think that, you know, not to get too far down this sidebar, but I also think that Trump is a better person than he's made out to be in a lot of ways. I really do. I think that he's unfairly been smeared as like he wants to rape his daughter or something. No, he said in the press that his daughter is a beautiful woman, because she is, frankly. I have a daughter. My daughter's beautiful. I can say that my daughter is an attractive woman, and I don't want to sleep with her. She's my daughter. Gross. But by the same token, it's like someone in politics can say something like that, and anything can be used against you in the world of politics. So that's kind of just to give you, if you've never watched this show before, watched me yap before, just to give you an understanding as to why I defend Trump probably a lot more than I attack him.
And, you know, they're actually dramatizing as far as they can the phony P tape.
You have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
They defiled a bed that Barack and Michelle Obama slept in during a state visit by urinating on it, sir. I see. Again, the Bureau has not yet been able to...
Just the dramatization of this is so... It's like... And people wonder why these shows... Like, no one goes to watch this shit. Or no one... You know, and I mean, like, oh my God. Like, this is so fucking sad that this is... It's pure propaganda. And, like, when did it get this bad? There's an argument to be made that it happened with the passage of the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which I've gone on a sidebar about before, and I won't here, but let's
independently corroborate the claim or any other conclusions here. But given what we now know of Trump's complicated financial ties to Russian banks, his loans from known oligarchs,
which also turned out to be fake, right?
Everything was fake. The only known tie basically was that Trump at one point signed a letter of intent to build the Trump Tower in Moscow, but it got nowhere because he couldn't get financing, and he didn't even know who to call in the Kremlin. That's pretty much the extent of it. And like one of Trump's sons said that, yeah, we have a lot of Russians buying our properties. Okay, okay, great. But again, it sounds so silly now, but this was all they could talk about on corporate TV. And again, you turn into alternative media too. My old home, Democracy Now. Everybody fell for it. This was right here the prevailing consensus. Like Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times, like kind of progressive columnist. I remember her saying, she wrote an article saying that we need to have a national conversation about whether the P tape is real. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And Jonathan Chait of New York Magazine, I think now he's at the Atlantic, he said, I'm a P-lever. But he meant that. He was pushing the idea that Trump had been compromised, had been a Russian intelligence asset since 1987. So this was like a zombie. You and me, ain't that America? Those of us who didn't, and I know it's, that's the Grayzone audience too, so you all can relate. This was like living in a zombie movie.
His ongoing attempt to get that tower built in Moscow, the dossier does provide a plausible, if alarming, working theory. Russia has compromised Trump.
Oh my God!
Did this.
Russia
did it. No.
Russia
did it.
Russia
Did it.
I'll be using that a lot throughout future
Russia
Did it. No.
Russia
Did it.
Russia
Did it.
So just to keep hammering on kind of the media take on it. So watch some of this. This is actually really good.
This sort of group mania allowed for this to be pervasive. And even now, when evidence comes out showing that the intelligence wasn't there to support it, has any mainstream outlet reported on this? Have they reported that the NSA and the FBI had low confidence in the Russia hacking leak allegation?
No,
has anyone ever
they're
reported
ignoring
that?
all of this. They're going with the Democrat line of like, there's no there, the Obama line, there's no there, the Pod Save America line, there's no there, which I'm going to get to in 1 second. But let me show a little bit of that. This is from the Media Research Center and what we were hearing about Russia hacking the election at the time, SOT 63.
Russia hacking the election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
The Russians definitively hacked the election. Russia did hack the election.
No doubt. The Russians hacked the election.
Yes, Russia hacked the election.
In fact, Russia hacked the election.
President-elect Donald Trump still not sounding convinced that Russia hacked the election.
If you can get him to accept that Russia hacked the election, see if you can get him to accept who won the Civil War. The director of national intelligence, the head of the National Security Agency, the head of the FBI.
Colbert is the definition of the word smugnerant. Oh my God. I can't believe the trajectory of that terrible fucking piece of shit.
All of these intelligence experts saying Russia hacked the election.
The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, I mean, they've all said this. So to believe that that's wrong, you have to believe they're all involved in an elaborate conspiracy to get Donald Trump.
Oh my God, that's an amazing clip. I hadn't actually seen it myself, Aaron. And by the way, the lower third on the CNN clip where they're saying, they hacked. These are all the officials and the agencies that said they hacked. The lower third is Trump, unsure if Russia interfered. So like Trump was the only one who actually was right. Actually, I'm not quite certain whether they did or they didn't. And all those media figures, so sure, because the NSA and the CIA and the FBI were undoubtedly leaking to them, telling them that it was so, and they completely forgot a journalist's obligation, which is to kick the tires, especially on a story that is hand-delivered to you with a big red ribbon on it from any three-letter agency.
So I just want to pause for a second and think about how many people wrote like books, not only the movies, obviously we just saw the fucking movies where they're like dramatizing there. I'm sure there was like 10 Netflix series or whatever, but like David Korn, I have this... I should dig it. I should have dug it up before this. Is it in here? I did this song with. I won't dig it up right now. I'm not going to take that sidebar right now. But David Korn wrote a book for Mother Jones, like the Trump-Russia connection. Like and he's just one of many. Remember how they made these people into celebrities too, like that Michael Avenatti guy who turned out to be a total crook, and like there were all these like people who became celebrities like as byproducts of Trump getting elected, just because all you had to do to get the attention of the literally like the most, it's just like such a bald-faced political apparatus, the mainstream media for the Democratic Party. Like all you had to do was say something negative about Trump and they would give you all the airtime you wanted. You know, people that never would have, like Scaramucci is a good example. That guy Scaramucci, like he was like one of Trump's press secretaries for 3 minutes, and then they fired him, and he was on Dancing with the Stars, and suddenly every talk show, every Democratic talk show, as soon as he became anti-Trump, he's on every fucking show. You know, he's everybody's buddies, like the Cheneys. You know, it reminds you of how, like, and because, you know, people that were wrapped in that whole partisan mindset, it was easy to manipulate them that way. Because, you know, for me personally, it's like I hated the Republicans. You know, I voted for Bernie. I was a Bernie guy. I'm not a Republican. I fucking hated the Republicans. So, but because I follow politics a little more closely, and I kind of knew how hated Trump was by like the stock and trade Republicans, you know, the actual establishment Republicans, I kind of knew that, like, no, wait a minute, like, there's enough hatred for Trump from like the actual Republicans that this is probably a good thing, you know. Whereas for a lot of people who didn't have that level of awareness politically, they're just like, oh, well, the Republicans are bad, so Trump's bad. And it's like, it's not that simple. I'm not saying Trump's good, but like, it's not as simple as like, he's nowhere near any of the typical Republican. I think he's one of those guys who realized all you have to do is pander to like the people on the religious right and tell them what they want to hear, and they'll follow you. Because he doesn't believe, he's a New York fucking billionaire. You know, the guy is not, he's a very cosmopolitan guy. He's not Trump is not a salt of the earth Christian dude, you know? Anyway, now I'm just preaching to the choir here. Let's finish this out.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen, the level of media subservience to this narrative. And also, everyone also was convinced that there was a conspiracy between Trump and Russia, too. I mean, try to challenge that on one of these network shows, and it was very, very difficult. In fact, they didn't even allow on guests who would challenge that narrative. It's just, this was the talking point. And even though there's no one, like, we don't live in a totalitarian society, there's no official telling people what to say, but everybody just intuited that this was the narrative to go with. This was the way to respond to Trump. If you wanted to get into media spaces, this is what you had to say. And it was.
So this is going to be just a quick aside here for Aaron, because keep in mind, Megyn Kelly is, of course, kind of a right-wing show. She has kind of a right-leaning audience. She's former Fox. I love the direction that Aaron took this conversation in, and I want to give him a ton of credit for this, and I want you to see it if you haven't. And also I want to give Megyn Kelly a lot of credit for airing it, because this was in like one of her side clips too. This wasn't even in the main interview. This was like Aaron fucking just going off and her fucking giving him the platform.
And by the way, for me, you know, all this fear mongering about foreign interference, like, I'm on the left end of the spectrum. I do think there's foreign interference. I think Israeli interference in U.S. democracy is a lot more significant. AIPAC spends tens of millions of dollars to elect candidates and defeat candidates based on what it deems to be in the interests of Israel. Marjorie Taylor Greene's called for AIPAC to be registered as a foreign agent. I think that's a much more significant foreign interference in U.S. democracy than whenever Russian trolls put out on social media. But that all gets completely ignored because that is bipartisan. And here, because there was this partisan effort, started by Hillary Clinton, to frame Trump as a Russian asset and blame Russia for his election, rather than look at the Clinton wing's own dysfunctions, their own failures. Everybody went along with it, and we're still paying the price because now, people still want answers. And, Trump voters especially were, dismissed with contempt as malleable dupes who were.
So were a lot of like black people and like minority voters, like, oh, Russia tricked you into voting against the Democrats. Remember that? Like this was the scapegoat for so many things. So many things. And I have the clip of Kamala Harris in my intro talking about how Russia might have been responsible for Colin Kaepernick. Like, what the fuck? How stupid do you have to believe something like that?
What's the weather like on your planet?
Brainwashed by Russia into not voting for, saintly Hillary Clinton. And so there's also this elitist contempt that underpins all of this. So accordingly, people in the media don't want to be embarrassed for going along with a massive scam. And that's why it's still very difficult to get accountability. And that's why they're still not reporting on the countervailing facts, the low confidence assessment from the FBI and the NSA. No one ever acknowledged that CrowdStrike, the Clinton campaign contractor, had admitted under oath they had no evidence of Russian hacking and leaking. No one.
It's like amazing when you pair that with.
So one more clip I want to share with you from this interview, where they kind of show the level of denial that these guys are kind of at right now. Because I don't watch Pod Save America or any of that garbage, liberal nonsense, but they kind of dig them up here. And I thought this was just, again, a really good example. Well, just a good piece of video for context into what's going on with this, like kind of how the people who are essentially guilty for spreading this nonsense are kind of responding to the new evidence that they are full of shit.
Obama, since this story broke, they're crapping all over it. They think people like you, like me, like Matt are completely irresponsible. I'm going to give you a flavor for it.
Yeah, and it's like, look, like these people, so like people like John Favreau here, which you're going to see in just a second, and the Dan, whatever the guy is, these like former Obama campaign guys who run this shit podcast. What you're going to see is they're going after people who actually have actual credibility, who Matt Taibbi and Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal and all these people have real credibility because they stood up and went, no, this is bullshit, when it was difficult to do that. So people trust them, like myself, because they said they're no fans of Trump. Matt Taibbi wrote a fucking book called Insane Clown President, and he gets treated by Democrats like he's some kind of partisan hack because he had the nerve to call out their nonsense. And it's fucking over now. But let's watch how they're going to try to cope with this.
Let you respond. SOT 50.
Do you think they can will this scandal into existence just by repeating treasonous coup and false narrative and manipulated intelligence over and over again?
I don't think we should call this a scandal. Like, I don't even know what else to call it. Like a crock of shit. Like, it's not a scandal. Suggests that there was an allegation of something. There's a at least credible allegation of something. There is. They can't even.
So just to pause for a second, like these guys are basically just doubling down on smugnerance, just doubling down on the smug. They're like, oh, this is just stupid. You're stupid if you believe this. You're the dumb one. I'm super smart, guys. I'm super smart. I worked for Obama. You know, you guys are just dumb. You're just dumb. That's their answer to this. You're just dumb. I worked for Obama. You're just dumb.
Explain the allegation. It makes no sense. This is the most easily debunked thing in the world. And
we just explained the allegation.
the shortest way I would do that is, how can it possibly be that Obama was trying to steal the election from Trump when during the election, the FBI was investigating Trump and told no one, but the FBI instead announced an investigation of Hillary Clinton 3 weeks before the election?
First of all, that's like a gun owner type argument. Like, no one is arguing that Obama tried to steal the election from Trump. That's not what anyone's arguing. So already he's using straw man argument.
It's all part of the plan, Dan.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah, those people are just dumb. They're just dumb, you guys. Oh my God.
Thoughts on that one, Aaron?
First of all, it's not true that the investigation into Trump and Russia was suppressed. It came out in the New York Times shortly before the election. So that's not even true. And yeah, they couldn't say very much because they didn't have anything. It was a scam. And I think they were still putting together exactly what kind of conspiracy theory they wanted to go with and what aspects of it, because Trump was being framed as a Russian asset. And so, yes, and the point is, whatever they did before the election, after the election, they ran with this and they basically sabotaged Trump's incoming presidency before it even began. They released an intelligence assessment saying that basically Trump was the product of Russian interference. They sabotaged his cabinet by going after Mike Flynn, and they, through leaks to credulous media stenographers, they basically painted this picture that Trump was being controlled by Vladimir Putin, and they made the Steele dossier look credible. So sure, you can say maybe Obama wasn't trying.
Yeah. So just quick aside, because I had to remember what this was called. But look, David Korn from Mother Jones wrote an entire book based on this completely fabricated fake scam. And I don't know if you remember back in the day when the New York Times did the Caliphate thing. They did this podcast story on this thing called Caliphate. There was basically the story that this Muslim terrorist operative guy told them, and the guy turned out to be completely full of shit. It turned out to be completely fake. The whole thing was manufactured. And then they had to like go back and fucking retract all that shit. They New York Times got Pulitzer Prize awards and shit for reporting on complete manufactured nonsense in this. And so kudos again to people like Aaron and Glenn Greenwald, who took loads and loads of hot shit during when it was difficult to call this out as nonsense, which it now has been proven beyond a doubt as. And
scales for Trump in the election, but certainly other people were. John Brennan was briefing members of Congress in August, trying to basically say that Russia was backing Trump. And that's why you had letters from Harry Reid to Obama demanding that Obama put out there what he knew about Russian meddling in the election. So even if Obama wasn't trying to help Hillary Clinton out with this, he was allowing it to happen by having a CIA and an FBI help frame Trump as a Russian agent. And he was briefed back in July by Brennan that Russia was aware of a plot to frame Trump. So really what Obama should have done is called all this out and said, like, we can't have a baseless investigation, which the FBI had already launched and had massive consequences way into Trump's first term.
So, I mean, there it is. It's the whole thing was kind of just basically a ruse. And now these people are having to kind of try to wiggle out of basically kind of writing entire books based on nonsense. And so the last piece of this I want to show you before we move on to kind of the next segment, the next story. The last piece of this I want to show you is the kind of trajectory of Tulsi Gabbard. And I think Max and Aaron here sum this up very nicely in a way that just really kind of ices this cake for us. So listen to hear what they have to say here.
Russia also had intelligence that Hillary Clinton was plotting to frame Trump as a Russian agent and to gin up a false scandal about Russian interference. The U.S. got that intelligence before they opened up the Trump-Russia investigation. John Brennan even told Barack Obama about it. This is like July 26th. And instead of raising concern about that, they let the FBI investigation go ahead. And in fact, and then John Brennan even sent a referral to the FBI saying, listen, just so you know, Russia is aware that Hillary Clinton has a plot to frame Trump as a Russian agent. And the FBI basically buried that warning. And James Comey later said that he doesn't remember ever receiving it, which is just laughable. But allies of John Brennan have said that, yeah, I mean, the reason why Brennan was concerned about it was not because Hillary was framing Trump and Russia, but because they were concerned that Russia was spying on Hillary Clinton. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable what happened, how much fraud, how much negligence, how much malfeasance went into all this. And
Hillary Clinton called Tulsi Gabbard, when she was a Democratic candidate, a Russian plant or a Russian 100%. Agent herself.
There it is.
So Hillary threw the first punch.
Hillary threw the first punch. Now, okay, I just want a quick sidebar here because I got shit from a lot of people on the left for kind of just defending Tulsi Gabbard. Not necessarily defending Tulsi Gabbard, but what I said was, and I'll reiterate this point again, who is going to be better to have in the DNI position than Tulsi Gabbard? Who is going to be better? As a former Bernie guy, who is going to be better? Answer me that in the comments if you got an option that's realistic, because this is what I've always said. And I think one of the reasons politics is kind of breaking the way it is, where the Democrats have completely lost the left because of what they did with the Bernie movement. And the left has kind of been, a lot of the left, the populist left anyway, has realized, oh, we can actually get things from MAGA if we work with these people for America-based things that are going to help the country itself. So, you have all of this stuff kind of combining to a point where it broke the Democratic Party beyond repair. I don't think that they're ever going to come back from this, because Russiagate really was their excuse to themselves and to their donors as to why they lost, when the reality of why they lost is what I just said. They alienated the actual voting base, the populist left,